Hey y'all, Christian Thunder Lazy here. Wanted to talk to you about lead in, lead out. It's a common function used to mitigate issues while laser cutting, commonly like the little start brown spot on wood that you get from the initial firing of the laser to cut through, or say the little tick marks that you get at the end of a cut on elevated materials. So those are two common things. Now, when it comes to setting up lead in and lead out, it's more of an advanced topic, meaning you got to know about lead in, lead out, and a couple other things to make it effective. So one, previewing is going to be key, setting up nodes, understanding shapes and groups, and the start function for each shape. So node editor here for adding in nodes as needed, and the start node here, because your lead in, lead out is going to show up at the starting node. So if I click that and then click a shape, you'll see this little blue arrow that then allows me to click on other nodes to create starting points. Text will have minimal ones. So if we click that, you'll see a couple basic ones, right? So you got to be aware of these tools, how to use them, stuff like that. Now, let's talk about lead in and lead out. Where you're going to find it is on your line layer. So this is for your cutting, not necessarily for scoring. I suppose you could, but I don't really know of the use case at this point. But under the advanced section, so you got to have basic turned off. So we want to see the advanced. So right now we've got a 45-degree positive lead in with a 0.1 of an inch and a arc shape. So that's what we've got enabled just on this layer here. So when we preview it, we'll see what that looks like. All right, so you can see this first square, it's in the corner. That's probably good, meaning we're going to keep whatever we cut out that's here. On the second square, I'm actually intending to almost create like a frame. So this inner part's the junk, the scrap. So having this lead in, lead out to the outside is not good. And then when we look at the text, that's horrendous, right? We're leading in, those are okay, not so good there, not so good there if we zoom in. Horrible here on the B, horrible on the A, and horrible on the R. So we've got some work ahead of us to do. Now, what you'll notice is I didn't have to click a single piece of artwork to say, okay, assign lead in, lead out in view. It's whatever's on that layer. So be careful when you're adding in new stuff. Like if I want to draw a frame around this and I didn't want lead in, lead out, I should probably put that on another layer. So I'll put that on that red layer and then make sure we don't have lead in, lead out on that layer. All right, so for text, what you're going to want to do first is we are going to convert that to a path. So once you do that, you can no longer edit the text. It becomes just shapes. So when I select this R, it's really no longer an R anymore. It's just a combination of shapes. The other thing you'll want to do is inside versus outside objects. So if it's an inside object and I've got outside as well, I know I'm going to need two types of lead ins and lead out. So I'm going to go ahead and put these on a different layer because they are the inner part of the shape. And like I said earlier, this square here, I want to make it an inner as well. And that'll allow us to adapt its lead in, lead out the same way on these letters. So then I'm going to use this selector tool and for the start node, and I can go to each shape. Now, typically on the shapes, I look for the sharpest corner that's kind of on the outside here. This corner here is sharper at the bottom of the cube, but that's going to be what I'm going to call an inside corner. I really want one of these out here, so I'm just going to go through and select those. On circular shapes like this O, I'm just going to pick one of these bottom ones. On the B, that corner. On the A, that corner. And on the R, go with that corner. Now for the inner shapes, I like to pick something on the longer part of the wall. That gives me an opportunity for, the tail to lead in, lead out. So I'm going to start selecting those nodes. You can see this is the kind of the longer part of this slot or oval ellipse shape. Just start clicking those. All right. This one here, we're actually going to click this bottom one. If we needed to, we could use Node Editor, zoom in, and use the I button on my keyboard to add a node, which will then give me the opportunity to select that. This one here, we're going to pick at the bottom there. For this square, which is actually not a square, it's actually just a series of line segments connected. It looks like a square to the visual, but it's not in the sense of a square object. So I've added in nodes in the center, and because this is going to be a inside lead in, lead out, I want to pick that. If I pick the corner, there's a good chance that when it does the lead in, it's going to cross over the edge. As a matter of fact, I can show you that as we go through and set it up. And this for the outer one, we have a true square. This is a square shape drawn with the square tool. And then I can just click that outer one, and we should get the lead in, lead out on that corner. All right, so let's highlight everything again, preview it. All right, so you can see we got the corner here, corner there. We did pretty good on the black layer. Everything's basically to the outside. Now the problem is on this blue layer, we want to get these to the inside because these lead ins and lead outs are cut through the shapes we want to keep. So I'm going to go into that blue layer, go to its advanced tab. Instead of 90 degrees positive, I'm going to change this to 90 degrees negative, and then look at it. All right, we got what we wanted. And we could probably increase the length if we needed to, if we want to move that spot a little further away. So we can go back in and say, okay, instead of 0.1 of an inch on the blue layer, we'll go to 0.15 and maximize its ability to get that starting burn mark away. And as we increase that, you can see on this A here, it's starting to get a little bit closer to my final cut line. So I may want to pick a different node, but I really don't have a lot of opportunity. So that may be something where we go back and say, you know what, that 0.15 wasn't it. Change it back to, let's say, 0.12. Right. On preview. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now on this square here, I want to bring that into the inner part. So of course I've added my nodes. I'm going to select the starting node of that inner node and then preview it. Yep, pretty happy with that. And then on this one here, it was pretty easy. Now, as you set up these lead ins and lead outs, you may find that you just can't find a setting here that works for every object, right? As you get into tricky artwork and stuff, you can actually manually draw your own lead in and lead out. So let's take this red square, which should not have anything enabled here because it's all turned off and disabled. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the command Alt-B. That's going to turn this into a series of lines. It's the blow up command or break command. So now I've got 4 lines. Then I'm going to take at one of the corners, I'm just going to draw 2 lines, arbitrary length or whatever. Select those, put them on the red, and then select one of the lines and one of my actual shape lines, and we join everything with Alt-J. So now when we preview it, Lightburn already puts in the starting point here. If I rewind it, you can see there it is. So I manually added in, lead out, because I've made the shape modified. All right, so that's kind of a real quick run through. You got to be very careful about when you set lead in, lead out up, and then watch it for your next project. Use that preview function. It's going to save you material time and frustration, and use these functions when needed. Thank y'all for joining us. Let us know if you like the video and the content. Have a good day.